All right, all right, all right. Come on now. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Holy shit. We are here. And what you'll notice, first of all, at least what I can notice in my head, as I've got my headphones on, is I'm sounding incredibly bassy. Bassy. Like I've got some bass. Ba, 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 ba. What's up, everybody? So we're in the new studio, and it sounds completely different, probably because I had to remove the majority of the acoustic treatment that I had put in, which is a bit of a drag, because I had to repaint the whole thing for issues that will go undiscussed. But here I am, and I'm in the corner of the room, tucked away. Apologies for the 10:30 start, but that's the way that it has to be, or 7:30, depending on where you're at in the world. Oh, yeah. Man, I got even more radio DJ, and there's probably someone just outside the studio. It sounds as though they're mixing gravel, which is fucking awesome for a live stream in the background. So all things are going good here to start us off. Okay, what are we doing today? I mentioned in the big podcast that we would probably be doing some financial stuff today. And I know a lot of people were looking forward to it. A lot of people messaging me, talking about can't wait. And this is where I disappoint you in my lack of preparedness. Is the studio basically flooded, so I had to take some measures to save all of my shit, because not only do I have the podcast stored in here, but I also have all of my gear, and it flooded ever so slightly. Nothing major, but it was an absolute pain in the ass. So I can tell you what I was going to tell you in about a 20-minute long form presentation. I can spare you the sitting through it and suffering through it. Basically, if you're a cinematographer and you work often enough to afford gear, now I'm not advising you to do anything. I'm simply telling you from my personal background what I have found to be the most financially beneficial thing to do if you work enough is to corner every single aspect of the market. And yes, it's certainly dangerous. It's not for everybody. If you live in Los Angeles, or if you live in New York, or if you live somewhere where there's lots of access to film gear, chances are producers and production companies, they won't really be hip to you taking over the market. But if you live somewhere like I do, this can be beneficial. I'll give you an example. So let's say I was in Los Angeles not too long ago for a 3-day shoot. And a 3-day shoot, generally you'll get some production companies who will, production companies that will, when you have multiple days shooting, they'll try and get you to discount your rate, or they'll try and get you to package your rate, especially if you're coming from out of town. Los Angeles, they don't do that as much. But, if you're traveling somewhere and you're going to do 3 days, they may try and get you to do the Tech Scout slightly cheaper, or come for a week and not have travel days. Or everyone's always trying to skim. Everyone's always trying to find ways to make things cheaper for themselves. And generally speaking, after the director, who will make significantly more, but is, depending on the contract, is only really paid for production days, but then you have to factor in that they're on the job probably 10 times as long as a cinematographer is. That would be generously under, would be 10 times as long. So if you're on for a day, they're probably on for a month. And apart from that, usually it's a cinematographer that's going to be making the most amount of money on a day rate basis. Now, this gets into, as a cinematographer, do you charge for a buyout? Do you charge for your 8 hours or your 10 hours plus overtime for the other hours? How do you do it? How do you set it up? The standard in Australia, which I sort of carry over to everywhere else, is a buyout. And if you have an agent, you really don't have to think about this stuff, because a lot of the times they'll do negotiating for you, which is one of the big benefits of being in the agency game, is that you don't have to seem like the dickhead that is making all the money talk and who is saying, yeah, I mean, I definitely want to be a part of the project, but if you're going to pay me this instead of that, I'm not interested. So that is one of the good things about having an agent, because you can always be the nice person and say, yeah, I'd really like to be involved. Talk to my agent. And then the agent goes in there and goes, hey, listen, dipshits. He's not going to do that because, or he or she is not going to do that because you don't have enough money. You're not going to fly business. You're not going to do the blah, 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 whatever, per diems, anything it is. So, but I'll give you an example of how I do it. So generally I'll do a buyout, which means that there is really no overtime. So you're buying the entire day. It doesn't matter if you shoot 12 hours or 18 hours or anything like that. You're buying the entire day, and that's a carryover from the idea that you used to, well, you still can to a certain extent. You can still push. The cinematographer can still make the entire production delayed, especially in commercials. You know, if you're setting up lighting for a shot and you're not happy, generally the first AD will come up and ask, you know, are you ready to go? How much time do you need? What else needs to happen before we can roll? And they're not asking that to the director. They're mainly looking at the DP, asking them those questions because, you know, you're setting the level of what you want it to look like. And of course, you could just turn on the camera and start rolling. But to make it polished and to keep consistency over an entire project, they look to you for those time things. So the buyout is basically there so that you don't take, you know, 4 hours to light a shot, which you could have done in 30 minutes. So it's sort of keeping you in check. So it's there. So I do a buyout, right? I'm on a buyout, and for that job, ends up being $4,000 a day. So you get $4,000 a day to come for 3 days and do this shoot, and then you get a tech scout fee. Which tech scout fees, you know, you can be the person that barters the tech scout fees, or you can just be the person that says yes to the fee. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility. I generally just say yes if it's anywhere close to what I would normally ask for. So some people do 66%. Some people do a full day rate for a tech scout. I think that's going away more and more. Some people do a full day rate. Some people do 66. I do half. So for tech and travel days, I do the exact same thing. I do half of a day rate. And the day rate will vary from project to project, but generally it's between $3,000 and $5,000 per day. So that's great, right? You go to Los Angeles, you do your 3 days, you're looking at, what is that, $12,000 plus your tech scout day, which is going to be $2,000. So you're looking at $14,000 for essentially a week's worth of work, which is great, right? That's really, really good. There's, you know, and you're fucking making pictures. Come on, people. But you're you know, with that money comes the responsibility of delivering the desired results that they expect, and that's why you're on the job, and that's why there aren't that many cinematographers who find themselves in that area. I mean, I'm talking out my ass. I'm sure there's lots of us. But anyway, that's the fee, right? And you go away and you're thinking, oh, that's pretty good. Now, you contrast that to another job that I had here, which was 2 days. 2 days, and I got all of the gear on it. All of the gear, because as a cinematographer, you set where the stuff come from, you set what you want, what you're after. Now, this job is not near as exciting. It's not near as good in terms of what the project is actually going to be, the end results, whether or not it'll ever see the light of day on the reel or on the podcast. It'll eventually end up on the podcast. I'm sure I'll break it down. But the benefit is that with all of the gear on, where you set the rates, all of a sudden that rate was 3,500 Australian dollars for the buyout, which ended up being a 12-hour day. So where the rest of the crew, after 8, they get 1.5 until 10, and then after 10, they get double time. The cinematographer, you just get your standard rate. After that, though, the equipment essentially doubles your day rate. So now, instead of working 2 days, you're actually working 4. And yes, you have to take into account insurance. Yes, you have to take into account that you got to look after the gear. You got to pick it up. You got to stay ahead of the curve. You got to stay on the ball. But you can also throw in deals. You can also work, because if you're getting a day out of the gear, you know, you can choose. Do you want a day out of the gear? Do you want a day out of your stuff? Are you looking to help production out? Are you not looking to help production out? Where can you get in? Where can you fit in? Basically, you want your gear. Me flying to Los Angeles and doing a job from a financial point of view is almost it's essentially a loss if it's under 2 days. Whereas here, if you're local, well, now we're talking about a completely different thing, because you're getting all of the gear on. All of the gear without any of the expense. So it's a fucking massive difference. Anyway, I'll lay it out next time. But that's the gist of it. The gist is people always talk down gear. The more cinematographers I talk to, Whether it's in, LA and New York, same thing, only a lot of the people have to house their stuff at Panavision or house their stuff in rental houses because that makes it easier for production. If you don't have everything, then production has to Mickey Mouse around, and they got to go through you, and they got to go through a production or a rental company, and then they don't get the same deals from the rental company. So it can be tricky. But basically, even though what is the common narrative throughout the internet world and through speaking with, not even speaking with DPs personally myself, but hearing other cinematographers talk and higher level cinematographers talk, nobody owns any gear. And I could certainly see that if you were a feature person. Not owning any gear would make sense. But in the commercial world, almost across the board, every single cinematographer that we've either had on the podcast or that I've talked to outside of the podcast says the same thing, where they all own gear. Because that's where you make the money. Yeah, your day is defined by, how many days you can get a year. But if you're going to do the work anyway, and they're giving the money anyway, you might as well use stuff that you're comfortable with and familiar with, and people shit on it. And yes, it takes a certain level to be able to pay it off, right? If you're just starting out, I'm not sure you're going to be able to pay off a Mini. It's all based on customers. But once you get to that certain level and you start to see, okay, I'm here, what can I use? What tools can I use to make more money? Number one, filters. We talked about monitors. Those two are the grab bags of cash. Filters you can take everywhere. I take on every job. Just because you can. You put them in your backpack. Every time I go to LA, any rental house we go through, I always use my filters. Batteries is another easy win. Basically, all of the cheap stuff makes the most money. Tripod, even though it's not cheap, it's on every single job. You want to think about those things. The WCU4, Jesus Christ. Man, I should have bought one of those. That thing is on every job. And here in Australia, it'll go for $400 a day. You get a full kit for 20 grand. Come on. You're looking at a year and a half, you got that thing paid off. A year and a half. And then for what? It's been out for 4 years? 3.5 years? That means you got 2.5 years of, if we're conservative, 100 days of rental. You got 40 grand? Get the fuck out of here. Okay. Let's see. What do we got here for questions? Sorry, I haven't been ignoring this as I'm staring at the wall. What do we got here? Sid Singh shot that bad boy on the A6300. Yes, we'll talk about it with some weapon. Tavis, Sid, Patrick. When you say 3,500 inclusive of gear, is that camera, lenses? What about filtration? No, not inclusive. I'm talking exclusive. 3,500 is for the day. And then all the gear is extra. Tavis, DPs owning gear is common in Australia, but would you say it's different in the US? No, that's what I'm saying. Certainly from a feature standpoint, it's different. Certainly from a traveling cinematographer, even a traveling cinematographer though. Everybody that we've had on the show that is high level, you're not going to travel. Oh, maybe you will. You're not going to travel with your mini kit when you can just show up and grab a body. And you're not going to bring your head and legs. At least I'm not. Even when I go over east, which is essentially every other job, I'm not going to bring my O'Connor 2575 head and legs and case and everything for the $300 rental that it is. I'm just going to go and show up and get it there, and it's going to be basically my job is to make it as easy on production as possible. I don't want to fuck them around. I don't want to have a shitty time at the airport. I just want to get there, get the job done, and go home, right? But those are completely different business models. Where in Los Angeles, I can't really speak for New York, but in LA, it's the same thing. Every person that I talk to, they either have their stuff permanently parked at Panavision, or they have their stuff permanently parked at another rental house, and it's just all the time getting out there and working. And if they have their own jobs, they use their own stuff, and this is how they get it on. And you cut deals like the Panavision deal where you get a certain percentage of whatever that rental is, and Panavision takes care of the rest. You just sort of tack on the bill, and everybody knows that. Like the last job I was on, the first AC had most of the gear. We were at Panavision. We did the checkout there. We shot on the DXL2. We shot with the Primo lenses. Everything else was the first ACs. He just had everything, and he would just tell the Panavision tech there, "Oh, swap this out for that. I've got this. You've got that. I need my monitor on this job. This monitor here. Blah blah blah. I want to use my wireless, not your wireless." And it's just basically a free add-on for absolutely no. There's no risk if you're getting the jobs anyway. Which is, like I say, once you get to a certain point where you're like, okay, I'm getting You know, if I know last year I got 20 days and the year before that I got 20 days, well, I'm probably going to get 20 days. So I reverse the math. What can I do? What can I use to get more income? How many days will it take to pay off? It's not. Anyway, we're getting way longer than I thought, but that's the idea. Okay, let's do Tavis. We talked to you, Patrick. Got it. How do you decide rates of those items then? Rates of which items? The gear? On the camera and stuff? Do you match the rates of your gear with the rental house's offer? Yeah, you just sort of figure it out. You look in your area, you find out how much it goes for. If you charge too much, the producer will say, what the fuck is this? You know, it's not like, you guys are on the same team. The producer wants the best price. You want to get your gear on the job, but you don't want to be screwing anybody. It's not like you're going to be coming in, and you don't want to be completely, there's no point completely, you're not undercutting anything. My prices aren't any cheaper than the rental house. It's just I'm already on the job. I'm the person that decides where the gear comes from. Okay. If you're going to travel a lot, this is Spencer. I don't currently live in a film town. Would you recommend keeping investments to small stuff? Filters, batteries, fizz, maybe lenses? Not even. Yeah, that's exactly right. If you're going to travel with those things and you're going to try and make money, the hard part is if you're traveling, all you can really do is, at least from my own experience, you're not going to get an Arri WCU4 on a travel gig if you bring that with you in a bag. It's just not going to happen. Even if you're going one state over, you got to keep it to, you know, rental houses will understand filters, monitors. You start throwing other shit in there and you're some random person. Well, then they're going to give feedback to the producer. They're going to say, you know, this DP has got this gear. The less you get from us, the worse the deal is. And then inevitably what's going to happen is maybe that happens once or twice. You know, you get away with it for a few jobs. Eventually, some producer is going to say, what the fuck's going on? We're Mickey Mousing around with this rental house company because you want to bring your $100 filters on this job. And then you look like a dipshit. It may not matter. You may not lose you the job. It may not, but it's avoidable. So that's what I would say. Okay, let's get in. Should we get into this breakdown? I can't even remember if we're looking at the right screen here. Let's see. What am I looking at? Okay, we're on the right screen. Okay, this one's Sid Singh. First of all, Sid, this frame here, this is one that you want to keep because this is beautiful. And this is what we talk about all the time. This is what you want to look for in a frame. Haze, you certainly haze the shit out of it. There's no doubt about that. You were 100% right when you were thinking that. There's a fuckload of haze in a few of these shots. Very hard to keep consistent, especially on a low budget. Haze can sometimes be great, sometimes be problematic. This one, you nailed it. And what the haze does is exactly what it was designed to do. You're lifting the shadows, so you see in this side of the face, we got nice, it's dark, but there's still something there, right? There's still a tiny bit of level. And this was the part when you were shooting film that was so difficult to do. To judge exactly where to set those blacks. And now with digital, it's become so much easier. You can literally just look at the monitor and see, oh, that's not enough. Let's bring this down. Let's bring this up. But this is the look, right? This is, if we were to look at the histogram, even though this histogram's dog shit, look at that. All below the halfway line, right? Except for the windows. All below. Now, if you just had that idea all by itself, it would be a pretty good image, right? You'd have your haze, you'd be doing some good things. But what plays here is the composition and the blocking of the talent and the camera relative to the source. That's what makes this good. What you've got windows. Oops, I'll change colors here. You got windows where the light is coming from that can be seen, but not seen out of, right? This one, I don't know if you put diffusion on here or if this is just naturally diffused, but this is what you want. You want depth. You want three-dimensionality. You want, if you just had black back here and not these windows, this would look like shit. But what gives it the shape in the background is those little pops, hot, bright, dark, bright, dark. Key from this side, okay. It's unconventional. Her angle, because generally you'd have her pointing the other way and you'd have the light coming this way, but this works, short-sighting her. You know, there's nothing, it's not like you have to what do they call it when you key from that side? Key from the upstage side every time. You don't have to key from that side every time. This works. This works. It feels good. What is more difficult when you're doing it this way is the balance. And so if you can do it and you can make it look good, that's great. And this is what Sid has done here. I mean, it looks good. This is how you want to do short side, right? Because you're not, it's not all the way reaching around over across the nose. It's just that little bit of hotness coming in here. Looks good. Haze in the background. This sort of brightness level looks good. All of this looks great. And even the little walk-in. I don't know if you were using an easy rig or what, but yeah, it's really cool. So I would say this is really your keeper frame from this whole thing and the whole job. I don't know what it was. Is it a short film? People trapped in this one single location? Whatever. It's good. It's a good shot, and I like it. Okay, next one. Now, this is where we went a little... we went to the moon with the haze. I thought this was Black Pro Mist for sure. A combination of haze, Black Pro Mist, because you are getting some serious diffusion here. Okay, so again, you got a few things going for you. This is not your first rodeo. You've got wet floor, which is always good. You can imagine this would be much flatter and much less dynamic if you didn't have this reflective light on the ground, right? It would be a lot more dead. And that's what you're looking out for when you're doing night exterior or interior stuff, or any stuff really. It's you want to stay away from dead zones. And at night, the ground can really become a dead zone because generally you're not going to have lights on the ground, which means no sources, which means no specular highlights, which means boredom, right? Essentially what's happening over here, what's happening over here would be happening all the way over here. And that's not what we want. We want interest. So this is good, right? Even in this flatness, you see how this is flat? Not as interesting as down here. This is the good stuff. So you nailed that, which on a low budget, I like the fact that you've done that. Well, what's difficult here talking is that all of this stuff, all of these stills, let's just go through them. That way we can see what we're dealing with. So we got this guy, he hears some voice, he goes over, gets something. This little girl's about to get in a car, she's about to go home, and he's talking to him. So those are what we're looking at. It's all taking place in this garage. It looks like one of those horror film sort of suspense thrillers. Yeah, I mean, it's good. You're using very minimal sources, and you're setting yourself up for this shot. Because this shot, I believe, this light is one of these two sources, right? And that's what you're setting yourself up for. So you've done great in the wide. Get what you can. Get the coolest angle that you can. But make sure you're placing the lighting components in the right spot for when you go in for the rest of the coverage, right? Now, because that lighting is on the back wall, we established it in the wide. We established the movement here of him going this way. We pick that up here with him still traveling this way, looking across. We're shooting into shadow. We're able to get that source in the background. And then the source that you can't see, which I imagine would be the other quasar tube over here, that's now doing this lighting for us. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Sid. But yes, that's what I would imagine you're doing here, and that's why I think it works. Again, like we said before, the haze also helps. It just takes everything from... because what sells under experienced or inexperienced or cheap is those blocks of either super hot or super dark, those chunks with no information in them. That's where haze can really cheat you through it. And if you're in that, what would I say? If you're in that zone where you know what you're doing, but you really don't know what you're doing, which is, year 2 to year 5 as an aspiring cinematographer, haze is your best friend. Because you can go way more extreme, and it just reels it in. It's like having a safety harness where he's like, oh, I'm gonna go super dark here. You put a little haze in there, and then the haze is just like reeling you back in, like, hey, dipshit, you're going way too dark, but I'm gonna save you this time. And it also does that to the highlights. It does the same thing. It's just like it's like bowling with those bumper sides. You can't really fuck it up that much, especially with most modern cameras. Now the dynamic range is so good that's, I would imagine, yeah, that's what I feel. Okay, Sid. Yep, lit the area before and floated around hosed shots down. Yep. Used my 2x2 LED mat to reinforce, motivate those practicals. Perfect. So you're using it to, so you're getting those angles in the wide. We know that it's back. We don't want, imagine how different this scene would look if Sid had made the mistake of having the lights over here, having the lights this way, shining in on him, right? It would look like shit. And then once you got to this shot, it would look even worse because we'd have all of our lightness coming here, all of the darkness from the side that we can't actually see. We don't need to see that information on this dude. We've already seen him. We already know what he's doing, where he's going. By this point in the story, we don't need to see and identify. All we need to do is motivate the action that was happening in the wide and make it look cool. And that's exactly what's happened here. So a big thing here, before we go back to the wide, you got your shape here. You got your composition is great. You got background depth. It's not so overpowering. I mean, it is hot. This light is hot. But this stuff is not so overpowering that it takes away from what's happening in the foreground. All right, we're using those layers to make it look cool. Then you've got the slight, ever so slight change in color temperature. So using color contrast as well. And then the big one that really sets it up is those eye lights. So either that's coming from your 2x2 mat or it's coming from, it looks like there's two there. If we zoom in, it looks like there's two. So one could be the tube on the wall and one could be, it doesn't look like a matte shape though. Maybe back up here, back out. So this is a great frame too though. You know, you've got the darkness, but you see how this isn't all dark? You know, there's still information in all of this, but it feels dark. It feels dark because you've got this bright, hot highlight in the background. So it's good. I'd be happy with it. I'd be happy with the color. I like this thing behind his head too. I don't know if you did that on purpose or it just so happens to be the frame that I chose. But having that little bit of leak behind him, it just brings out his shape. You can imagine if this was all dead. You know, if that area was all black, then this would just be one big black mess. There would be no contrast. There would be no variation. And I think that's what actually works. So, again, good job there. This is probably my second favorite shot, apart from that little girl. You've done well. Okay, this one, yeah, you see the effects of a slightly more boring background, right? So this is much more flat and much hotter on his face. Now we're closer to the light, but if I was going to be negative, I would say just to take down the level on his face, right? It seems so incredibly hot as opposed to what we've seen before. Now, of course, it makes sense, right? He's obviously gotten closer to that work lamp that we saw in the wide. He's now closer to this thing. He's probably over at this table, whatever he's doing. It makes sense that he would be hotter as he got closer to the light. I would just take it down just a little bit. That's personal, though. Then you've got haze gone and complete darkness. So see where in the one before we had just that little bit of ambientness. In this one, we just got none of it. We've just got a dark blob. And where in the background before we had that little hot spot here, I mean, to a certain extent, there is a variation in level because here it's just completely black. And here there is just a little bit of hazy level. But the interest is less because the specular highlights are less, right? We're not feeling, even though this is way darker, you're not feeling that sense of darkness near as much because you don't have things in the background to play off of. Right? You don't have those specular highlights in the background, whether it be window, whether it be work light, whether it be something back there to then allow you to bring down the rest of the scene, right? It's just all one level. But let's look at the good side. The good side is you're still shooting the right way. You've still set yourself up for every possible success because you still got the light coming this way. You're still shooting into shadow side. He's still, yeah, it's a, you know, an awkward frame. He's looking into this wall. He's fairly close to that right-hand side, but still, it's as good as it could be, given the area that you're in. You know, minus any interest in the background. You know, and that takes time. It's the background really that takes the most time because that's a big area to do. And if you've only got 2 people, or if you've only got yourself and a buddy, or you know, 3 other people, and you don't have an art department, this is where it starts to show that, you know, it's not quite as big or as large a production as some of the other shots would have told us. So that's that. Looks good. Okay, cinematographers would have grabbed a practical off the wall to use above the vehicle in the background. Yeah, I mean, if it's a one-off shot, but then it doesn't really play for the rest of the stuff. But yes. Okay. Sid said he tried that. Here we go. Now, this is what we're talking about. This is, again, a great shot. This is those levels where we've seen all these people before. We've seen this girl before. We don't need to see her anymore. This is towards the end of Sid's little video. And now this is all about just give her something, right? We don't need a whole thing. All we need is variation. And we've got dark in the hand. We've got highlight back here. We've got highlight over here. And you can just see that eye, right? If that level here was like this level, it would look like shit. But it's not. It's got just enough to see in there. And that's what you want. That's the vibe that we're going for. That's the ability to manipulate the shadows with that sort of finesse is what we want. And then it falls off, of course. There's nothing wrong with that. But even in the background, the little haze, just picking this up, just that little bit, to even though it's a darker variation, and even though it's not a lot of tonality difference, it's still there, right? You're still picking it up all over this thing. There's still an abundance of tones for a very dark image. If we go there, it's even less. Look at that. I mean, you're not getting a lot out of this thing, and it's all there. Plus, the reflection is nice on the glass. That plays cool because it picks up extra stuff in the background. Very cool. Okay, and then the last one. This one is, yeah, I mean, you got a little bit of a tough angle here because we've set it up all dark, and then we sort of hit that wall. That would be a bummer. But this is cool. Again, we got the outline. You got the direction of the light that is played well for this scene, because this is the hand scene still, a little girl in there. And the angle is good because it works for his scene, works for his frame, it works for her frame. It's coming from the same direction. Looks awesome. The only thing is it's hitting that wall. And that could probably be a grade thing, but it could easily be a floppy thing as well. So you park a floppy or a cutter just outside to the left, camera right of that lamp, whatever's doing the job, and then you just take it down off that wall because it feels slightly more lit up than the rest of all the shots. So yeah, and then the darkness is nice. You got that. You got a good frame here. He's in the right spot. Set him up there. Look at that, perfectly drawn, 3x3. But all in all, I really liked it. I liked the color. I liked the ability to control the shadows, which is why I picked it, just because, that skill of deciding what is dark and what is not, what is too dark, is really at the beginning. It's one of the biggest challenges, is knowing how hard you can push stuff and how much stuff you can get away with in the grade, and how, where is the shadow information clipping? Where do you need it to be? How do you maintain interest when you've only got a very limited amount of exposure? When the values are only playing below the 50% line, you got to keep that interest. How do you keep that interest and keep that shape and be able to manipulate it? And I think you did a good job. So, Sid, congratulations. You definitely got, I would say, I mean, this shot's good. Definitely this one is on the reel. And then probably this walking close-up. The problem is you'd have to tie it together. This is, the wide's not my favorite, but definitely under the circumstances that you had, given the location, and like you say, being pushed for resources, a real cool job. It's just, as I said, it's hard in the wider shots of the background to be able to sell the same level of production as this stuff. And that's what you're trying to do. If you are interested in tricking people into giving you opportunities in the commercial world, it's all about tricking them into thinking you've done bigger stuff than you have. And this shot speaks of that. It feels very high-end narrative. So good job, I would say. Okay. And let's see here. What do we got? Yep, Tavis, cool. Well done. Sid, using the small HD. That up, baby. Jeff's in the mix. Look out. And what else? False color helps, but this was super on the fly, so I had to adjust by eye. That's good. Getting it done. Okay, sweet. Yeah, well, that's probably it, unless you guys have got questions, because I'm trying to get all this stuff done here at the studio. If you got questions, send them in. Again, apologies about the financial side of things, but I will definitely get to it. And people asking about the block battery thing, as soon as the studio is up and running, it is so close, people. It's so close. I'm going to be able to do videos. It'll be much easier. It'll be all set up. It'll hopefully be cool. I know I'm talking up the shit out of this thing, but I really think it's going to be... I think the Patreon is about to ramp up, basically, because I'll have video stuff all the time here. Just walk in, do a video. The live streams, I think, are going to pick up. I don't know. I feel like it's a good time. So if you got questions, get them in now. If not, man, did you hear Denny Lenoir on the podcast? Denny fucking Lenoir. The dude that shot Still Alice. He's old. He's fucking crazy. He wears scarves everywhere. I mean, he's a French guy that wears those little glasses. He wears scarves everywhere. Has anybody typed his name into Google? Do yourselves a favor and type in Denny Lenoir into Google and see the picture that comes up. See the fucking picture of this guy that comes up on Wikipedia. If that guy doesn't look like a cinematographer, I don't know. I'm not up to date with my stereotypes. But he was cool. He was cool. He was a super cool dude. And yeah, I had a good time with him. Next week, like I said, we're doing that Tree of Life thing, that Tree of Life knockoff. We'll do a breakdown of those frames. And then the week after will probably be, some of you will be familiar with a guy named Joe Simon. And Joe just released a little short film shot on 16 mil. And we sat down when we were in LA, chatted to him. So he'll probably be coming up. And then we'll see who after that. I'm not exactly sure. Let's see. Yeah. Alec, you saw that Google pic. How good is it? He's fucking doing like Blue Steel. Some old French dude doing Blue Steel. It's very interesting. Okay, Josh, you gave a lot of valuable... Well, not really. I'll get there. Don't you worry about that, Josh. Basically, you can double your yearly income if you have gear. And that's contrary to what you hear advice from a lot of people. And yeah, if you're, I don't know. I figure if you're, in year 2 or 3 and you don't know whether you're going to do this or you're going to become a karate instructor, I can understand, don't sink money into gear. But if you're looking at doing this and you're in it and you're a professional, having your own gear makes a lot of sense. I don't see any, the downside, of course, is insurance and trying to weasel your stuff onto projects where it may not actually fit. But just don't do that. And then you're not a bag of shit. And then you're doubling your income. Show me the downside. I don't get it. Anyway. Cool. Blue 4 Delta, what happened to the Wonder Boy? That's a good question. The Wonder Boy, well, he went on vacation. Or he went back to the motherland for a while. Now he's back. I actually just saw him on set last week. He was helping out. He was shooting some behind the scenes on a commercial that we were doing. And we had a bit of a joke that he might be back on the show. So you never know once the studio gets fitted out. But for the moment, the Wonder Boy is no more. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with, moonlighting as a karate instructor, Justin. There's nothing wrong with that. I do a bunch of shit. So, okay. I think we wrap it up there, ladies and gents. Cool. Appreciate the support, Patreon folk. And hopefully... you guys are getting stuff out of this. Okay, here we go. Last one. Alec. I'm only a couple months in. Haha. I'm trying to get... The haha never really works when somebody just reads it out loud, right? I get what you're doing there. It doesn't really work for me. I'm only a couple months in. I'm trying to get onto any sets possible, but I don't know any DPs in Dallas, Fort Worth. Any tips? Well, do I know anybody in Dallas? How about you win the fucking music bid, film and music conference tickets? That no one has claimed. I'm going to do the drawing. Maybe we should do the drawing right now. No, that would be unfair. I'm going to do the drawing. I'm going to put it on next week's podcast, and someone is going to win those tickets. Then you're going to know a whole shitload of DPs and directors in your area. And if not the area, all over across the country. Alec, easiest way to get on set is to make your own set. I don't know how many people we've had on the podcast tell us that. No one. I get people email me all the time. Can I come on to set? Can I do this? I just want to be a PA. People say that, and then nobody does it. Nobody gives two shits about being a PA. They want you to, I don't know. Some people, they just get a very quick hit of motivation. Yeah, this is how I heard on, Wandering Dipshit podcast, that this is how you get on set, but you just got out there and you get hungry and you just got to email people and then you do it and this is how it all gets done. And then they get motivation for a day and then you talk to them and they never actually come. And then you do that 3 or 4 times and you just get, ooh, just like, fuck it. But I understand the plight. The thing is, everybody starts the same. The stories all go the same, no matter how many times we've had different variations. Nobody ever goes from being a PA to shooting something the next day. They always go out and shoot stuff their own anyway. So why don't you skip the PA part and just go shoot stuff? I don't know. Tomorrow my advice on that will change. No doubt about it. Okay. Yep, surprised you don't have more subscribers. God damn it. What are you talking about? Subscribers on YouTube? Cinematographers? I don't know what you're doing. Yeah. I don't deserve a lot of things. Okay, that's going to do it for the podcast or the live stream. We'll see you folks in the next one. Go make some cool shit and then send it in to the Patreon so that I can get jealous like I am of this first shot of Sid's. And go, damn it. Why didn't I do that shot? Anyway, okay. See you later, folks.